Hello there my RPG lovers and welcome to another video. I felt now would be the best time to upload my video review of Outward since at the moment I have more than 100 hours played. Other than my general thoughts about the game, I would like to try and help new players who have doubts about buying Outward. Is this a game for you? Well, it depends. Did you ever thought about playing a game where you can play as Putin, the feminist version? Or do you prefer to engage in a long erotic talk with an educated tree that offered you a place to sleep? Then Outward is a game for you, stop watching this shit and go buy it now. Anyway, for the people who are still watching, let's get serious here. Outward is a survival open world RPG made by a small team of 10 people from 9 Dot Studio. It's been in the making for quite a while, around 4 years to be exact, and they had a clear vision for what kind of a game they wanted to make. The term survival might make you think that this is another pure survival game, like so many shitty games out there, but that couldn't be more far from the truth. Outward is a proper RPG with survival mechanics. And those survival mechanics have a strong reason to be in the game from the narrative point of view, since you're playing as a regular guy and not some hero from the legends. While playing, you'll discover lots of ways to reduce the need to concern yourself with survival mechanics. I felt like this needs to be said because lots of people can get intimidated just by reading survival in the game description. Let's pretend that I'm a proper reviewer and start with the graphics. The game doesn't look hideous by any means, but it's not hard to see that graphics are outdated by today's standards. To make up for the clear lack of resources and manpower, 9 Dot Studio tried to create an interesting art style, combining pretty color palette and good atmosphere. Apart from some visual bugs, the lighting in this game is really solid, and without a light source at night you won't be able to see anything. There is a day and night cycle and your visibility will be almost non-existing at night without a light source. The climate can completely change one zone, covering the terrain with snow, and that drastically changes how this certain zone looks. When it starts snowing, the terrain will progressively change. And if this is not a nice attention to detail, I don't know what it is. It affects the gameplay, but more on that later. While the character models are really bare bones, with just a couple of options to choose from when making your character, armor sets and the gear in general offers great variety of looks and interesting designs. So your character will look like a badass most of the time, even though his actual face looks like it came out from a 2009 game. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about the visuals, but if this is your main selling point when buying games, this obviously isn't a game for you. In my opinion, the game is definitely pretty to look at, even though the graphics are outdated. Now let's talk about the sound design. I honestly didn't expect much from the tracks because I thought it's going to be a generic fantasy music for the most part, knowing that developers didn't have a big budget. The soundtrack turned out to be really atmospheric, well placed and not overdone with some dramatic tracks like in some similar games. Good soundtracks are really important for immersion, and the composer for Outward certainly knew what he was doing. My favorite track is hands down from the zone called Hollowed Marsh, so I'll play you a little sample from that soundtrack. While the soundtracks are great, the same can be said for the sound effects in the game. Not all sound effects are bad, but most of them are lackluster. Magic effects are passable for the most part, but they could be better as well. Some enemies sound really good, especially more challenging monsters, while others sound downright bad at times. A lot of inconsistencies in quality when it comes to sound effects. And what about the voice acting? Well, for starters, there isn't a whole lot of voice acting in general, but when it happens, it's actually good.
Stop this shameful behavior at once!
NPCs will usually say a couple of lines, leaving you to read the rest of the text. It can be a little annoying at first, but you get used to it. If the game turns out to be really successful, I wish that developers do an enhanced edition of the game with full voice acting, something like Larian did for the first Divinity Original Sin. Your character is not voice acted, which is a plus in my book actually. I like to imagine how my character would sound, and in my opinion this helps a lot if you intend to replay the game. I don't like to listen the same voice over and over again. Anyway, let's move on. If you saw at least one of the promo videos for Outward, you probably could hear that your character is just a normal person and not a hero in this game. This approach to storytelling makes sense, especially when we think about the survival mechanics and how you need to eat, drink and sleep like any other normal human being. I'll try to keep this spoiler free as much as possible, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the story. I'll basically only talk about the first hour or two from the beginning of the game. Like I said, you're just a regular guy or girl and not some fantasy hero. That doesn't mean that you won't be able to become a big deal in this world actually. You start off the game by surviving a shipwreck, and in the first city you'll find out that you have a blood price on your name that you inherited by your grandmother. Thanks a lot, Grandma. You will have 5 days to pay your debt or you're going to lose your house. And yeah, this will be a good time to point out some quests will be timed, and this first main quest should teach you that there are consequences for your actions. You're going to meet 3 of your good friends in the first city, and they turn out to be quite memorable actually. There are 3 joinable factions in this game: the Blue Chamber Collective, the Holy Mission of Elat, and the Heroic Kingdom of Levant. The 3 friends you're going to meet here are all members of a different faction, and after the first main quest they will depart on their own journey. To progress further, you have to go on a trip and find one of them in other zones of the game. You'll have to join one of the factions in order to finish the main story, so that means if you want to see everything in the game, you're gonna need to make at least 3 characters. In order to avoid major spoilers, I can only say that the story is well written and decently paced with some unexpected twists. I do think that the game needs more interactive NPCs that could at least tell you more about the lore of Ori. Hopefully we'll see more in some DLCs or expansions. Alright, I saved the best for the last. I would dare to say that the gameplay is the whole point of Outward. It's just really fun to play when you figure out how the gameplay works. I mentioned that Outward is definitely not for everyone, especially not for impatient gamers. It doesn't hold your hand at all, it actually spits on your hand, gives you a map with no clear indication of your current location, and off you go to this cruel world. The gameplay is usually compared to Dark Souls, but I would disagree. Only comparable aspect would be the difficulty, which is even greater than Dark Souls games. Well, in my opinion at least. The game can be brutally punishing for beginners, but if you stick with it for a bit, you'll see that the gameplay is not actually that hard. You just have to learn from your mistakes and not be too greedy in fights. The biggest advice would be not to get hit, learn how to dodge or block and wait for your opportunity for attack. There are quite a lot of approaches to combat situations depending on your choice of skills. This game has 8 different trainers that can teach you different skills, and you'll be able to choose to unlock all the skills from the 3 trainers of your choice with something called breakthrough points. You'll still be able to learn all the skills from different trainers that won't require the breakthrough point, you just need the silver to get them. This allows us to make different and unique builds. Some skills work off stamina and some will require mana. The magic in this game is also quite unique. You even won't have mana unlocked until you do the quest in the starting zone. Spells can be combined for different, usually stronger effects. One trainer in particular will teach you 4 rune spells that need to be combined in order to have an effect. I have a full video dedicated for this, you can check it out here and I'll leave the link in the description. The game also offers you a lot of different ways to approach the combat. You have 9 different weapon types in the game, which will allow you to play however you see fit. You have swords, axes, maces, bows, pistols, chakrams, daggers, polearms, spears and shields. Some skills from trainers will be specific for some of the weapon types, but you also have skills that you can use with almost all weapons. Like I said, you can only choose to unlock all the skills from 3 trainers of your choice, but you can still learn some skills from every trainer if you have the silver. I also have 2 videos where I showcased all the skills from every trainer in the game that I'll link in the description, or you can click this card again. Outward also doesn't lack in enemy variety. We got mini bosses, big bosses and even hidden bosses. A decent amount of smaller and bigger dungeons in all 4 zones of the game with a huge variety of loot. The game has 40 different armor sets. You'll be able to find, buy or craft them yourself. There are also some sets that only smiths from the main cities can make for you when you bring them silver and materials. The loot in containers are usually RNG, but there is also artifacts and unique hand-placed items that you can find. Some of them are well hidden in dungeons, while others can be found in the open world. There is just too much stuff to collect and try out. I could go on and on about this, but now I have to move on. The survival mechanics in Outward are definitely not to be ignored, but as you play and get more items and skills, you'll reduce the need to worry that much about this system. You can't actually die in this game, you'll just respawn at different location, usually with some debuffs. You can lose some stuff from your backpack, or even the whole backpack if you took it off during the fight. But usually you'll be able to get it back by following the icon on the compass. Sleeping in the wilds can get you ambushed, but you can also try to find a tent that reduces the ambush chance. When it's snowing, it's advisable to have a proper armor with cold resistance, and it's the other way around in the desert. All in all, I never felt too abused by survival mechanics in this game. It's just a feature that will become less noticeable as you play and get more items. Like I said, the gameplay's where Outward truly shines. It's not perfect of course, and it has a lot more room for improvement, but even like this, it's a really enjoyable experience. This video could easily go for at least an hour, but if you followed my channel for a while, you know that I like to keep it short and straight to the point. I think I was clear enough, so if you like what you heard and you can handle ambitious games with smaller budget, I would recommend this game to you. Support smaller developers with no live service bullshit, microtransactions and similar crap that developers of today shove down your throat. If you're new to my channel, you can find a bunch of guides and tips for this game here. My channel is based around RPGs in general, and if you're into those games you'll definitely find something for you, so be sure to subscribe. I have to give special thanks to my patrons for supporting this channel in the long run. And if you as well want to make sure that this channel grows further, consider checking out the Patreon page. I'll leave all the links in the description. See you in the next one.